90s Retro Return.
If you watched my last video about Pizza Hut's Book It program, you know that Pizza Hut was a staple in the lives of many kids of the 90s. However, you may not have known that it was actually tied to the very first issues of Nickelodeon Magazine. Before kids had targeted ads on social media, companies tried to get their attention through commercials, cartoons, and kids magazines. In 1990, the kids' television channel Nickelodeon wanted to dip their toes into the magazine world and publish their first issues through Pizza Hut. The idea was to test the interest of the magazine before fully investing into the idea, so anyone that made a purchase at Pizza Hut at the time could receive a free issue of Nickelodeon Magazine. By 1993, they'd fully committed to the idea and were publishing the magazine to magazine racks around America, Canada, and then later to the UK. The first editor of the magazine was actually R.L. Stine, who is now mostly known for his children's horror fiction books. He was already working for Nickelodeon as the head writer of Eureka's Castle under his pen name Jovial Bob Stine, and he made the transition to editing Nickelodeon Magazine for the first few issues. However, not all parents were fans of the magazine's humor for their kids, but the 90s had a lot of other options like Highlights Magazine, Zoobooks, Ranger Rick, American Girl, Disney Adventures, and Sports Illustrated for Kids, to name a few. Highlights Magazine was aimed toward younger kids, and even if you didn't receive them in your mailbox, you may still remember them from being in dentists' and doctors' offices. Reading about the adventures of Goofus and Gallant are fond memories of children to this day. Many 90s kids may remember seeing commercials for Zoobooks, advertising issues with each one based on interesting facts of different wild animals. An advertised selling point was that you would receive a free tiger poster with your subscription, which I totally had hanging on my wall. Because if Calvin Hobbes taught me anything, it was that tigers are awesome and you should befriend one. My cousin also had the Ranger Rick magazines, which were like Zoobooks, but more fun with comics and games, and not just a lot of facts about wild animals. Disney Adventures magazine debuted in 1990 after the success of Topolino, the Italian Mickey Mouse magazine. They wanted to see if they could replicate the hype of Topolino to an American audience by covering Disney news and sports, games, and celebrities. It featured comics from established Disney properties like DuckTales and Mickey Mouse, but it also gave a platform to non-Disney characters like Jeff Smith's Bone comic strip. In 1992, the Pleasant Company launched their American Girl magazine, with the target audience being, well, American girls. They promised not to have any advertising in their magazines, not even for other American Girl products, which was either noble or just genius marketing. But they did go back on that promise in 2009 when they started advertising their own products. The magazine targeted girls who were too old for Highlights magazine, but maybe slightly too young for something like Girls Life, that covered things like fashion and makeup and crushes. American Girl magazine was still plugged into 90s culture, but it was more wholesome than something like Nickelodeon magazine. And for kid athletes of the 90s, Sports Illustrated released a kids version of their magazine in 1989, which featured Michael Jordan on the cover of the first issue. Sports Illustrated for Kids included trading cards, comics, posters, athlete Q&As, and jokes to appeal to kids in the 9 to 12-year-old range. And they just didn't cover the mainstream sports, they also shed light on sports like skateboarding, snowboarding, surfing, and of course the most 90s sport of all, rollerblading. If you were more of an indoor kid, you also had options for magazines like Nintendo Power or Electronic Gaming Monthly, which both debuted in the late 80s, but gained popularity throughout the 90s. Nintendo Power originated from their Fun Club news, and the need to help kids beat NES games. Nintendo's in-house game master, Howard Phillips, recalled that kids were desperate for information about how to beat the games, so Nintendo created a game counseling line, and then used registration cards to send fans Fun Club news. But eventually the free publication became too expensive, so they created the paid subscription to Nintendo Power. Electronic Gaming Monthly covered new video game releases and reviews and gaming tips across all platforms, not just Nintendo products. It also had a spin-off magazine in 1994 called EGM2 that primarily focused just on cheat codes and tricks. If you were a kid in the 90s, what magazines did you like to read? Comment below and let me know, and subscribe if you want to see more videos where I return to 90s retro pop culture.